I didn't realize it the first time she brought it up. It seemed innocent enough, one of those passing things adult children mention when they think they're being responsible. "Mom, we should talk about your finances sometime," Claire said casually as she stirred sugar into her tea, sitting across from me in the sunroom I'd always loved. Just in case something ever happens. I smiled like I always did when Claire tried to play the grown-up. I had raised her to be practical, and she was. Sharp, sophisticated. A rising attorney with a house in the suburbs and a son at Yale. I'd always been proud of how far she'd come. But in that moment, her eyes didn't have the warmth I remembered from when she was younger. They were calculating, like she was working a case. And I was just a file on her desk waiting to be closed. Still, I brushed it off. "You don't need to worry about that, sweetheart," I said lightly. "I've got everything sorted. Will's done, savings are where they need to be. I even have an advance directive, remember?" I tried to chuckle, but it felt strained in my throat. She smiled too, but there was something behind it. A flicker. The kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "I know, Mom," she said. "It's just, things can get messy when people wait too long. Remember what happened with Aunt Teresa?" I flinched. Teresa had been my younger sister. And yes, her last years were chaotic pills, forgotten bills, unpaid confusion that came in waves. By the time Claire swooped in to help, there wasn't much of Teresa left to argue back. But I wasn't Teresa. I was 73 sharp as ever. Still teaching art to third graders at the local library. Still biking every Sunday to the farmer's market. Still cooking from scratch and keeping my little craftsman-style home pristine. I wasn't ready to be anyone's responsibility, least of all my daughter's. Claire's visits became more frequent after that. At first I thought it was sweet. We'd grown distant over the years. She had her world and I had mine. Her husband Vincent never came along. Said he was too busy or not feeling well. But I always suspected he just didn't like my house. It wasn't fancy and it smelled like lavender oil and books. Claire would show up with paper bags of groceries I hadn't asked for, rearrange things in the kitchen I hadn't needed her help with. Once I caught her rifling through the drawer where I kept my old tax returns. "What are you doing?" I asked, more startled than angry. She didn't even blink. "Just looking for that hummingbird recipe you used to make," she said. That was a lie. The recipe was in my cookbook on the counter where it always lived, but I didn't press her. I didn't want to believe my daughter, my only child, could be going through my personal papers behind my back. It got worse the week after I slipped on the back porch. It was nothing serious, a sprained ankle, but Claire responded like I had suffered a stroke. She showed up at the hospital before I'd even gotten an x-ray. "I've been thinking," she said, voice tight with urgency, as if my minor fall confirmed every fear she'd been nursing. "You should move in with us. You can have the downstairs guest room, and you won't have to worry about things like this anymore." I stared at her stunned. "Claire, I'm fine. It was just a misstep. I was carrying the watering can and the mat shifted, that's all." But her eyes were already on the clipboard on my lap, or at least let me handle things for a while, just until you're fully back on your feet. Finances, doctor's appointments. I can manage it all. There was a silence. And then she asked it that small question that felt anything but. "Do you trust me, Mom?" It was such a loaded question, like she'd rehearsed it. I nodded slowly because what else could I say? Of course I trusted her. She was my daughter. And with that, she leaned in, pulled out a folder from her purse, and said, "Then let's get the power of attorney paperwork started." I signed. Like a fool I signed. Not because I was weak, not because I was scared, but because I was tired. Tired of the way she looked at me like I was broken glass. Tired of defending myself for wanting to live alone, tend my garden, have tea on my own damn porch. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't want to believe what my gut already knew. Claire wasn't helping me. She was positioning me, like a pawn, like a problem to be managed. But I didn't realize how fast things would change. The next week, she showed up with movers. "I thought we could at least discuss this," I said, standing in the middle of my living room while strange men took down the paintings I'd hung with Hector, my late husband, 30 years ago. "There's nothing to discuss," Claire said already, halfway through packing up the kitchen. "It's all for the best. Your house will be listed by next Monday." "My house," I repeated. "You don't need all this space," she said firmly. "You said yourself the stairs have gotten harder. and the maintenance. Claire. She stopped, looked at me. A flicker of something, maybe guilt, crossed her face. Then it vanished. Mom, I'm doing this because I love you, she said softly. I'm protecting you, trust me. And I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But something in me cracked wide open right then, because I saw the truth as clear as sunlight through stained glass. Claire wasn't protecting me. She was erasing me. And I didn't know how to stop her. It took less than 2 weeks for my entire world to shrink into one room. Claire moved me into the downstairs guest room of her suburban house, the one with gray walls, no windows, and a smell of dust and lavender-scented cleaner that gave me headaches. This is just temporary, she said brightly, placing a too-firm pillow on the bed, until we figure out something more long-term. She meant a facility. I didn't need to ask. She brought over only the essentials, which apparently didn't include my watercolor brushes, my photo albums, or the quilt I had sewn with my mother in 1962. This house has a more modern aesthetic, she explained, as if I were a couch that clashed with her furniture. I kept waiting for someone to speak up. Her husband, her son, anyone. But Vincent was a ghost, always at work, rarely making eye contact when we passed in the hallway. And her son, my grandson, was too busy with college and new internships to care. No one asked me what I wanted. No one even asked if I was okay. The first week, I tried to keep things normal. I woke up early, made myself toast in the kitchen. But Claire quickly adjusted the routine. You don't need to be up so early, she said, pulling my plate away. Go back to bed. You need rest. I wasn't sick. I wasn't injured. I had a sprained ankle, for heaven's sake. But that didn't matter anymore. Claire had the power of attorney now, which in her mind meant she had power. Period. The bank calls started disappearing. I used to get updates, texts when large withdrawals were made, emails about bills due, even the occasional friendly call from the teller I'd known for years. Now nothing. I tried logging into my accounts one morning, but the passwords had been changed. You don't need to worry about those things anymore, Claire said when I asked. She said it like she was reassuring a child, as if my 73 years of life, my decades of working as a school teacher, my perfectly balanced checkbooks meant nothing now. I began to feel something I hadn't felt since my husband Hector died. Powerless. One morning, I walked no-hobbled into the living room where Claire was on a call. I overheard only one sentence before she noticed me and quickly ended the conversation. No, we'll hold off on selling the bonds for now. I want to talk to the advisor first. It's all under my control. Under her control? Her words rang in my ears like a bell. My bonds, my savings. The money Hector and I had set aside for travel, for emergencies, for the simple dignity of aging on our terms. She wasn't helping me, she was harvesting me. I confronted her later that evening, hands trembling, not with fear, but with fury. You're making decisions with my money behind my back. Her mouth curled in that tight professional smile she used in courtrooms and confrontations. It's not behind your back, Mom. I'm your legal representative now. Everything I do is in your best interest. I laughed then, a dry, bitter sound that didn't even feel like it belonged to me. In whose eyes? Yours or mine? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. That night, I cried in the guest room. But I didn't cry because I was sad. I cried because I was ashamed. Ashamed that I hadn't seen it sooner. Ashamed that I had handed my life over with a signature. Ashamed that the daughter I had read bedtime stories to, made lunchboxes for, and coached through her divorce, was now treating me like an asset instead of a mother. It was the second week when the monitoring began. It started with the pills. Claire brought me a daily pill organizer, the kind with AM and PM slots already filled. I've adjusted your supplements, she said, without discussion. You were taking too many herbs. Some of them interfere with blood pressure meds. I wasn't on blood pressure meds, but I let it go. Then came the calendar. She handed me a printed schedule, color-coded with my entire day broken into 30-minute blocks. 8:00 a.m. Wake up, 8:30 a.m. Light breakfast, 9:00 a.m. Supervised walk, 10:00 a.m. Quiet time, 12:00 p.m. Lunch. And on it went through nap time, puzzle time, TV time, relaxation time. I stared at it stunned. Claire, I'm not 6 years old. She gave me that smile again. It's just structure, Mom. You always did better with a schedule. I'd been a public school teacher for 34 years. I had written curriculums and trained new hires. And now my daughter thought I needed supervised walks and puzzles. I tried to push back. I insisted on checking the mail. She told me it was already sorted. I asked about my car. Oh, I sold it. You don't drive anymore. I looked for my phone. We'll get you a simpler one. That flip phone was too outdated. Every no came wrapped in fake sweetness, like poison in honey. And slowly I began to feel the walls close in. Not physical walls, emotional ones, psychological ones. Walls that told me you are no longer the captain of your own ship. You are cargo now, baggage. But the thing Claire forgot. I may be old, I may be grieving, I may be tired, but I am not stupid, and I am not broken. I knew I had to get out. I didn't know how yet, but I would find a way. I had to. Because what Claire didn't know is that I hadn't lost everything. Not yet. I still had someone in my corner. Someone who remembered me before I was a burden. My sister Mabel. And she was coming to visit. She pulled up in a cherry red Ford Taurus that had no business still running. Mabel had always been like that, stubborn, a little chaotic, and impossible to predict. She'd called the day before and said only, "Expect me Thursday. I'm bringing lemon scones and a whole lot of questions." It had been years since we were close. Life and husbands and distance had stretched us apart. But Mabel was still my sister. And the moment I saw her stepping out of that car wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf that hadn't matched anything since 1979, something in me, something small and scared, finally exhaled. "Mabel," I whispered through the screen door. She grinned. "Took you long enough. Open up. I'm double parked and dangerously caffeinated." Claire was not pleased. She appeared in the hallway just as I was walking Mabel to the guest room. "Oh," she said tightly, "you didn't mention company." "I didn't realize I needed permission," I replied, matching her tone. Mabel picked up instantly. She always had a gift for sniffing out tension. "I'll only be a few days," she said breezily, glancing around the house like a lioness surveying enemy territory. "You don't mind, do you, Claire?" There was a pause, then the smile. That same fake courtroom-ready smile Claire had perfected. "Of course not. Make yourself at home." But I saw the flicker in her eyes, like a chess player watching her opponent take a pawn she hadn't expected to lose. That night, after Claire went to bed, Mabel poured us both glasses of boxed wine and said, "Okay, now tell me everything." And I did. I told her about the power of attorney, about my accounts being locked, about the schedule, the sold car, the rewritten routines, about how I felt like a ghost inside my own life. She didn't interrupt. She didn't scoff or dramatize or ask why I'd let it happen. She just listened. And when I finally ran out of words, she sat back, crossed her legs, and said, "Well, that little princess has turned into quite the empress, hasn't she?" I choked on a laugh. "It's not funny." "No, it isn't," she agreed. "But if I don't laugh, I'm going to burn this whole house down." The next morning, Mabel was already up before me, frying bacon and flipping pancakes like she'd lived there for years. Claire came downstairs and froze at the smell. "What's all this?" she asked. "Breakfast," Mabel replied cheerfully, "the kind with fat and flavor. Sit down. I usually have a smoothie." "Good for you," Mabel said, sliding a plate toward me. She doesn't. It was war, polite, simmering war. Claire tried to maintain control that day, fluttering around with errands and appointments. But Mabel stayed, sat with me, asked real questions, the kind no one had asked in months. "What's your plan?" she asked that afternoon as we sat on the porch. "I don't have one," I admitted. "I don't even have access to my money." She sipped her lemonade. "Well, that's the first thing we fix." I looked at her. "How?" She leaned in, lowered her voice. "We start small. We don't play checkers, hon, we play chess. You still have your mind. Use it." What? Mabel stayed for 4 days. 4 glorious days of feeling seen, heard, and for the first time in months, not crazy. When she left, she pressed a small notebook into my hand. "Start writing everything down," she said. "Times, dates, what she says, what she does. If it comes to court, you'll need a paper trail." "Mabel, I don't want to take this to court." She raised an eyebrow. "You might not want to, but she might force you to." I nodded slowly. Somewhere deep down, I already knew she was right. Claire wasn't going to stop. She wasn't going to give me my life back just because I asked nicely. I would have to take it back. The first sign that things were about to escalate came the morning after Mabel left. Claire was waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed, coffee untouched. "We need to talk," she said. Always a bad sign. I sat down, bracing myself. "I've noticed some changes in your attitude lately," she began, "since your sister visited." I blinked. "You mean since I had a normal conversation with someone who doesn't treat me like a child?" She ignored that. "I'm concerned," she continued. "Your behavior seems erratic, suspicious." I stared at her. "Because I've asked questions." She folded her hands like she was presenting a closing argument. "As your legal representative, I have a duty to ensure you're mentally sound." The word hung there like a noose mentally. My blood turned cold. "What are you saying, Claire?" She gave me that patronizing smile again. "I'm just saying that if you're confused or overwhelmed, there are evaluations we can schedule. Just to be safe." There it was. The warning shot. If I pushed too hard too fast, she'd paint me as unstable. She'd weaponize the very thing I'd always been proud of, my independence. That afternoon, I went to the drawer in the hallway where I kept the journal Mabel had given me. Gone. I checked my closet, my locked file box unlocked, papers rearranged. Even my bedroom felt tampered with, like someone had been searching, digging, violating. Claire had crossed a line. And suddenly I knew this wasn't just about money anymore. This was control, complete control. She wanted my home, my assets, my story. And she would rewrite it however she needed to if I let her. So I began planning, quietly. Step 1, secure a new notebook. I found one at the pharmacy during one of Claire's supervised outings. She let me browse alone, assuming I'd spend my time in the greeting card aisle like usual. But instead, I found a small spiral-bound journal, pocket-sized, easily hidden. I bought it with cash from the bottom of my purse and tucked it inside my coat sleeve like it was contraband. Because in this house it was. Step 2, get access to my accounts. This would take finesse. Claire had changed the online logins, yes, but I still had my social security number, my old account numbers, and just enough knowledge to challenge things in person. Mabel had once told me paper trails don't lie, but they sure scare people who have something to hide. So I called my old banker, Marie. She'd helped Hector and me for years before Claire took over. When I finally got through, I lowered my voice. "Marie, it's Evelyn. I need your help. And please, don't call back this number. Just listen." Marie hesitated but responded gently. "Of course, Evelyn. What's going on?" I explained not everything just enough, that I hadn't seen my own statements in months, that Claire had power of attorney but was making financial moves I hadn't approved. Marie asked one question that brought tears to my eyes. "Do you feel safe, Evelyn?" I swallowed hard, not exactly. "Come in tomorrow," she said. "Bring ID. We'll talk in person," discreetly. It was a start. Step 3, protect what little I had left. Claire hadn't gotten everything. She didn't know about the small deposit box I'd kept at the library credit union, where Hector and I used to hide birthday surprises for each other like love letters and anniversary jewelry. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside it now were a few family heirlooms, a stack of old letters from my mother, and most importantly, copies of our original wills and trust documents, before Claire changed everything. I retrieved them during a short library trip Claire had allowed, claiming I needed new puzzle books. Instead, I went to the vault, heart pounding, and slipped the documents into my tote bag beneath the crosswords. That night, I tucked them behind a loose panel in the back of the closet. My fortress, my truth. What Claire didn't realize not yet was that for all her plans and polished manipulation, she had underestimated the one thing she couldn't control. The woman who had survived burying a husband, the woman who had taught 30 years of middle schoolers to stand up straight and find their voice, the woman who once rode out a hurricane with 2 flashlights, a Bible, and a cat named Marcus Aurelius. She saw an old woman with a sprained ankle. But I was so much more than that. I was a mother, a fighter, a survivor, and I was done playing nice. The next morning, I wore my best armor. Cream cardigan, slacks pressed, lipstick, just right. The outfit said I'm fine. The woman wearing it, a storm waiting to break. Claire was out on a work errand, one of her long lunches she never explained. Perfect. I had exactly 2 hours to get to the bank, meet Marie, and return before Claire's talons stretched too far. The drive was quiet. Mabel had called me a rideshare, discreetly arranged. The driver, a kind older man named George, chatted just enough to calm my nerves. When I stepped inside the bank, something shifted. Familiar walls, a familiar smell like carpet ink and forgotten dignity. And then there was Marie, still wearing her navy blazer and pearl earrings, still looking at me like I was someone worth respecting. We hugged briefly, then she ushered me to her office door, clicking closed behind us. Tell me everything, she said, voice low but urgent. So I did. The power of attorney, the frozen accounts, the sold car, the hidden mail, the routine that felt more like a sentence. Marie listened without flinching. You're not the first, she said when I finished, but we're going to make sure you're the last in your family. She pulled out a folder, explained how I could legally challenge the power of attorney with documentation testimony and proof of mental soundness. She also printed recent account statements. What I saw made my stomach lurch. Withdrawals, transfers, 2 credit cards opened in my name. One listed Claire as the user, the other, her husband, Vincent. I hadn't approved any of it. I gripped the folder, knuckles white. We'll start here, Marie said softly. We'll flag all new activity, and you should speak with an elder rights attorney. I have names. My head nodded on its own, but my heart, it was raging. Claire hadn't just caged me, she'd looted me. With manicured hands and a soft voice and words like, just helping. I made it back home minutes before Claire returned. She breezed in with takeout and a new cardigan for me. Seafoam green, the color she always insisted, brightened my complexion. I took the bag, smiled, said thank you. I was already wearing it, the mask she expected. But behind it, a fire. That night, I sat in my room organizing everything. The statements from Marie, the notes in my hidden journal, the documents from the safe deposit box, the list of attorneys. I was building a case, not in court, not yet, but in spirit. And just as I slipped the folder beneath the floorboard I'd pried loose under the rug, something caught my eye. A picture frame on the dresser, my wedding photo. Hector's hand around mine, that crooked smile, that look that said, we'll get through anything. Except he wasn't here. And suddenly I felt the ache of everything I'd lost. Not just my money, my name, my voice, my place in the world. I picked up the frame. But as I did, it slipped from my hand, a sudden spasm in my fingers. It fell shattered. The glass cracked into spider webs on the hardwood floor. I knelt trembling to pick it up. And underneath the photo, behind the paper backing, something was tucked. A folded letter, faded and stained with time. I didn't remember placing it there. But I recognized the handwriting. Hector's. If you're reading this, Evie, I'm probably gone, but I want you to remember something. You are not alone, and you are never as powerless as you feel. You're the strongest woman I've ever known. Don't let them turn you into a ghost. You still have a story to write. Yours, not theirs. Write it boldly. Love always H. I pressed the letter to my chest and wept, but not from sadness, from resolve. Tomorrow I would call the lawyer. Tomorrow I would start again, and I wouldn't stop until I was free. The call to the lawyer's office was the hardest part. Not because I didn't know what to say, I did. Not because I wasn't ready, I was. But because it felt like betrayal. Not of Claire, of the illusion I'd held onto for too long, that we were still mother and daughter. That some corner of her heart still beat for me, not my assets. But illusions don't protect you. They only make the fall longer when the truth finally lands. The receptionist's voice was warm, reassuring. You'll want to speak with Ms. Renee Kaplan. She specializes in elder financial exploitation cases. Would you prefer to meet in person or schedule a call? In person, I said without hesitation. If I don't show up in the flesh, people assume I'm too fragile. The woman laughed gently. We understand. Let's get you on the calendar. I chose Thursday. The same day, Claire had her weekly book club across town, a predictable 4-hour window. Plenty of time to slip out without triggering her suspicion. I had learned to move like smoke in that house. Soft footsteps, quiet plans, a ghost waiting for resurrection. 2 days before the meeting, I noticed something strange. The hallway closet was open just slightly. Inside it, behind the towels and board games, a small black object blinked. A camera. Hidden. Watching. I froze. then shut the door slowly. It didn't matter if Claire had installed it recently or if it had always been there. The message was clear. I wasn't just being managed. I was being monitored. I checked my room next. Nothing visible, but my lamp had been moved, the drawers rearranged. And when I lifted the corner of the rug where I'd hidden the bank folder, gone. She knew, or at least she suspected. I didn't confront her. Not yet. The smarter move was to act like nothing had changed. So I went about the day as usual. I thanked her for the groceries I hadn't requested. I complimented the tuna salad that tasted like cardboard. I even smiled when she reminded me for the third time to take my vitamins. But inside my mind was sharpening, clearing. I would not be caught unprepared again. On Thursday, I dressed carefully. I chose a navy blue sweater, gold earrings, the silver brooch Hector had bought me on our trip to Boston. Not just because they were nice, because they made me look composed, credible, competent. The world doesn't listen to old women who look lost. But if you look like a judge, a librarian with her facts straight, they take notes. The law office was quiet, almost luxurious. Thick carpets, dim lighting, no one rushing. Renee Kaplan appeared exactly on time. She was in her early 40s, I guessed, with curly dark hair and eyes that didn't flinch when I started telling her everything. From the first signature, I shouldn't have signed. To the moment I saw my own daughter in a courtroom's light, rather than a mother's glow. She took notes, listened closely, asked precise questions. And then she leaned forward and said, "You have a strong case." I blinked. "But I'm her mother." She nodded. "And that doesn't make it legal. Emotional obligation isn't a defense in court, but the power of attorney. You signed it willingly, yes, but she's violating its terms. A power of attorney is a fiduciary duty. She's supposed to act in your best interest, not her own. What if she says I'm declining mentally?" She didn't hesitate. "Then we'll get ahead of it. We'll have you independently evaluated by a doctor of your choosing. We'll document everything, and if she fights, we'll be ready." I swallowed hard. How long does something like this take? That depends on her. And what if I don't want to go to court? What if I just want my life back quietly? Renee smiled gently. "Then we try that route first, but we prepare for all outcomes." I nodded slowly, prepared. That word tasted good in my mouth, like a promise I was finally making to myself. When I got home, Claire was waiting. "Did you enjoy your walk?" she asked sweetly. "I did," I replied. "Met a friend for tea." Her eyes narrowed slightly. I smiled wider. "And I bought a new journal." Her smile faltered just for a moment. Then she turned away, muttering something about leftovers. But I saw it, the ripple, the crack. She didn't know where I'd been. She didn't know what I knew. And that scared her. Good. Let her wonder. Because I was done playing the part she wrote for me. This was my story now, and I was just getting to the good part. The evaluation came sooner than I expected, not the one I arranged through Renee. Claire beat me to it. It was a Tuesday morning. I was in the middle of organizing the pantry, more for my own sense of control than anything else, when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a middle-aged woman holding a clipboard and an overly cheerful expression. "Mrs. Evelyn Harper." "Yes, I'm Dr. Lillian Shore. I'm here for your cognitive assessment." My stomach dropped. "Claire." I managed a polite smile. I wasn't told about any appointment. "Oh," Dr. Shore said brightly. "Your daughter scheduled it. She said there were concerns about your memory and daily functioning." I stared at her stunned. My own daughter had scheduled a mental health evaluation without asking, without warning, in my own home. Weaponizing concern, branding it love. I led her into the sunroom, heart-pounding rage simmering just beneath the surface. Claire walked in moments later carrying 2 mugs of tea, like this was just another book club meeting. "Thought we'd get ahead of things," she said, settling across from me with an almost amused expression. Dr. Shore pulled out her pen. "This is just routine, a quick screening to see how you're doing cognitively. Shall we begin?" I took a deep breath and nodded. The questions started simple. What day is it? Who is the president? Count backward from 100 by sevens. I answered each with calm precision. Claire watched like a hawk. Then came memory recall. "I'm going to give you 5 words," Dr. Shore said. "Repeat them after me and try to remember them. We'll come back to them later." I repeated apple chair, penny garden, moon. "Perfect," she said. "Now tell me, have you experienced any confusion recently?" Forgotten appointments left the stove on. Before I could answer, Claire interjected. She's been very forgetful with names, and she misplaced her bank statements last month. I turned to her, keeping my voice steady. The statements I no longer receive because you rerouted the mail. The doctor glanced between us. I continued. And I'm not forgetful with names. I just don't always feel like saying yours. Claire flushed. The test continued. Drawing shapes, following instructions, answering hypothetical questions like, what would you do if you smelled smoke in the house? I'd grab a fire extinguisher and make sure my daughter wasn't lighting her bridges on fire, I replied. Claire scoffed. Dr. Shore hid a smile. I saw it. I saw the shift. This woman was no fool. She was trained to read between the lines, and the lines in this house were painted in coercion. When the test ended, Dr. Shore stood. Thank you, Mrs. Harper. You were sharp. Claire followed her to the door like a worried nurse. You'll send the results directly to me. Dr. Shore paused. No, she said. Results go to the client. Mrs. Harper is the client. Then she left, and Claire stood in the foyer, stunned. I walked past her, calm and cool. I may be old, I said softly, but I'm not dead, and I'm certainly not stupid. Later that night, Renee called. I just got word from Dr. Shore, she said. She called me personally. My breath caught, and she said you passed every part with flying colors. She even added a note, subject is mentally competent and likely under undue influence. Undue influence. There it was, the legal phrase we'd needed. She'll sign an affidavit if necessary, Renee continued. Claire's plan to undermine you just fell apart. I didn't speak for a long moment. Then I laughed, and it was the first real laugh I'd allowed myself in weeks. But just as victory began to bloom, a knock came at my bedroom door. I opened it to find Claire standing there. No pretense, no performance, just rage. You've been talking to someone, she said. It wasn't a question. Of course I have, I replied calmly. I'm not locked in a tower, not yet. Her jaw clenched. You're making a mistake, Mom. No, I said, meeting her eyes. I made one, trusting you. She didn't respond, she just turned and walked away. But I heard her that night, talking to Vincent in the kitchen, whispers through thin walls. She's more lucid than I thought. If she fights this, we're screwed. And just like that, her mask was gone. She knew the game had changed. And now she was dangerous. The next morning, I woke to silence, the kind of silence that felt too still, too calculated. Claire hadn't spoken to me since the confrontation. No passive-aggressive remarks, no reminders about vitamins, just quiet. And in our house, quiet meant planning. I checked my closet, my purse was missing. So was my cell phone. The burner phone Mabel had given me, the one hidden in a book spine, was gone too. I sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly aware that the walls had thickened overnight. The trap wasn't closing anymore. It was closed. At 11:42 a.m., Claire entered my room uninvited, carrying a tray with oatmeal and tea. I thought you could use a peaceful day, she said, setting it down like a nurse in a convalescent home. No calls, no stress. I didn't speak. I just stared at her, willing her to show the crack. She smiled, thin-stretched. I've contacted a specialist, Mom, someone who helps families navigate complicated transitions. What kind of specialist? I asked. A care consultant, she said carefully. They'll come by tomorrow to assess your needs. We're looking into alternatives to this arrangement. That word. Alternatives. It was her new code for facility. Assisted living, memory care, lock and key. The moment she realized she couldn't prove me incompetent, she pivoted. Not to care, but to custody. If she couldn't control me here, she'd move me somewhere easier. I gripped the teacup to keep from trembling. Does Vincent know? I asked. She flinched just a little. We've discussed all possibilities. I nodded slowly. You mean legal backdoors, guardianship petitions, emergency health proxies? She blinked. I saw it. She hadn't expected me to know the terms, but Renee had prepared me. I'm not your patient, Claire, I said softly, and I'm not your property. She didn't reply, just left the room and locked the door behind her. That was new. I paced the room for nearly an hour. Then I opened the vent. Behind it, taped to the duct wall, was an envelope. Mabel's handwriting, in case of emergency, read me first. Inside were 2 folded notes. One with the contact info of Renee's office, her direct cell, and the name of a shelter she'd partnered with for seniors in transition. The other, a quote, scrawled in Mabel's blocky handwriting. You can't keep a strong woman small without shrinking yourself in the process, and eventually she'll notice. I did. I noticed. And I was done being small. That night, I didn't sleep. I waited. And at 3:14 a.m., when the house had dipped into deep slumber, I opened the back window with the butter knife I'd hidden days ago. The screen was loose. I'd loosened it intentionally last week. I slipped out. Quiet, steady. Like smoke. Like someone who had nothing left to fear. Down the street, parked under a broken street lamp, was a familiar car. George's Taurus. He stepped out, yawning, and opened the door. "Miss Evelyn," he said with a sleepy smile. Mabel said to wait as long as it took. I got in. The weight in my chest lightened for the first time in weeks. We drove in silence for most of the ride. Then I asked where to... Safe house, he replied. Renee arranged it. Temporary housing for seniors until next steps. He paused, then added, "You're not the first, you know." I looked at him. Not the first mother locked in a room by her child. I swallowed the lump in my throat. That shouldn't be a sentence anyone needs to say. "No," he said quietly. "But I'm glad you're one of the ones who got out." The apartment was small, clean, quiet. No cameras, no checklists, no Claire. I slept for 13 hours. And when I woke up, I called Renee. "We go public," I said. "Are you sure?" She tried to lock me in a room and erase me. "I'm not hiding anymore." Renee's voice turned steely. "Then let's make some noise." The petition was filed the next morning. Revocation of power of attorney, motion for restitution, claim of elder financial exploitation. The language was clinical, precise. But behind every word there was blood. Mine. Renee warned me what would happen next. "She'll be served officially. Then there will be a hearing, you'll testify, and so will she." And the court, I asked, "Will they believe me?" Renee didn't flinch. "They will after the evidence. The bank records. The account changes. The unauthorized credit cards. The hidden monitoring devices. Even the doctor's report from Dr. Shore, now formalized and notarized. Mrs. Harper is mentally sound and independent. Evidence suggests psychological coercion and undue influence from her daughter. That sentence would be the blade. The rest would be the swing. Claire was served at 2:17 p.m. outside her office building. Vincent called me at 3:03. "Evelyn, can we talk?" I let it ring. Then let it ring again. Then finally picked up. "No," I said, and I hung up. 2 days later, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "You're blowing this out of proportion. I only did what I thought was best. I never meant to hurt you." "Claire?" I stared at the message, then typed back. Intentions don't erase actions, and silence isn't consent. I never said yes. I only stopped saying no. I never heard back. The hearing was set for the following week in a small courtroom downtown. No jury, just a judge. Just two women with different versions of love. When the day came, I walked in wearing the brooch from Hector, the navy blue suit I'd worn when I retired from teaching, and my dignity like armor. Claire sat across from me, jaw tense, her lawyer whispering in her ear. She wouldn't look at me. I didn't need her to, because I was done pleading to be seen. Now I was here to be heard. Renee laid out the case with surgical precision. The financial trail, the surveillance, the hidden evaluations, the mail tampering, the manipulation, the lockdown. And then she asked me to take the stand. I walked slowly, but I stood tall, and I told the court everything. I told them about how she slowly replaced my choices with hers, how she smoothed over cruelty with phrases like, "It's for your own good," how she used the law not to protect me, but to erase me. She turned me into a patient without a diagnosis, a prisoner without a crime. And I let it happen, I said, voice breaking just slightly, because I thought love would return if I behaved, if I didn't make noise, if I stayed small. I paused, but I remembered something. My life doesn't belong to her. It never did. And if I let this go, if I say nothing, it won't just happen to me. The room was silent. Even Claire's attorney stopped scribbling. I looked at the judge. "I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for recognition, for restoration." She nodded, and I stepped down. Claire's testimony was cold, clinical, a performance of concern. She's been erratic. She's confused about timelines. She's under bad influence from her sister and this attorney. We were simply trying to help. But the judge wasn't fooled. She asked one question. Did your mother ever consent to the surveillance device placed in her home? Claire faltered. I thought it was for her safety. Did she know about it? No, but the judge raised a hand. That was enough. The ruling came that afternoon. Power of attorney revoked. Guardianship denied. Monetary control returned. Damages pending civil review. I'd won, not just in court, in spirit, in self, in sovereignty. As I exited the courthouse, reporters buzzed outside. Renee stepped between them and me. But one voice rang out, Mrs. Harper. What would you say to other seniors going through the same thing? I turned, looked into the cameras, and said, trust your instincts, document everything, and never confuse silence with weakness. It's been 3 months since the hearing. 3 months since I walked out of that courtroom with my head held higher than it had been in years. 3 months since I stopped asking permission to be myself. I live alone again now. Not in the old house, too many ghosts there. Too much air soaked in betrayal and bitter echoes. Instead, I found a small cottage on the edge of town. Yellow shutters, a front porch with a swing, a room that catches the morning light just right. I call it the sunrise room. It's where I paint now. Landscapes mostly. Sometimes I paint the ocean. Sometimes I paint a chair sitting empty in a field. Sometimes I paint a single teacup on a table, chipped, but still holding warmth. Each stroke reminds me I'm still here. I'm still choosing. I'm still enough. Mabel visits often. She brings pastries and gossip and helps me plant lavender beneath the windows. She doesn't hover. She doesn't ask if I'm okay every 5 minutes. She just shows up, which is exactly what I need. The other day she said, you know, Ev, you've got a whole second act ahead of you. Might as well make it a damn good story. And I think she's right. I haven't heard from Claire since the day we stood on opposite sides of that courtroom. There was no apology, no letter, no quiet knock at the door, just silence. But this time the silence is mine. Mine to choose. Mine to break or not when I'm ready. Do I miss her? Some days, yes. But I miss who I thought she was more than who she turned out to be. That's the thing about grief. It doesn't just follow death. It follows realization. It follows betrayal. It follows the living. But even so, I don't regret loving her. I just regret mistaking obedience for love in return. Last week, I was invited to speak at a senior center. Tell your story, they said. You'll give people courage. So I did. I stood at the front of the room, palms sweating, heart pounding, and I told a room full of silver-haired women and quiet men what it felt like to be erased and then to write yourself back into your life. When I finished, a woman came up to me, tears in her eyes. She whispered, "You told my story. I just didn't have the words until now." And that's when I knew. This wasn't just my fight. This was the story of so many of us. Women who stayed quiet. Women who were raised to be polite, accommodating, generous. Women who gave and then were told they owed even more, but not anymore. I started a group, just 6 of us to begin with. We meet every other Thursday in the sunrise room. We drink tea. We tell the truth. We laugh. We weep. We paint. We write letters we may never send. We heal not loudly, not all at once, but together. Sometimes I wonder if Claire ever drives by the house, if she ever sits outside engine idling, watching the sun pour through the window she once tried to cover in drapes. Maybe she does. Maybe she doesn't. But either way, I don't wait for her anymore. I wait for the light. I wait for the next canvas. I wait for the morning songbirds that return each spring singing not because someone told them to, but because they can. I'm Evelyn Harper. I am 74 years old. I survived erasure. I reclaimed my voice. And I am not done. Not by a long shot.